Howdy, folks. I'm Farron Wise. Thanks for joining Consuelo and Ethan on today's episode. We're pretty sure you'll find it interesting. Our producer, Toby Eunice, would like you to know that he's put a link in the description box below this video. The link will lead you to a comprehensive briefing document on today's topic. While you're watching, please take a moment to like our video and make a comment. Also, if you're not already, please subscribe to our channel and click the notifications bell to make sure you're informed when we release each new episode. Now, let's get on with today's program.
Okay, so today we're going on a deep dive into something pretty fascinating. We're going to be looking at a real-world treasure hunt called There's Treasure Inside. And we're going to be comparing that with the virtual world that's in Ready Player One. And at first glance, you might think they don't really have anything in common. But I think as we dig deeper, we're going to find that there's a lot more there than meets the eye.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that deep down, they both kind of tap into that very human desire for discovery. You know, it's almost like we're hardwired to love solving puzzles.
I totally agree, and we'll get to that. But first, let's just lay the groundwork for the listener. So just imagine for a second that you're in Ready Player One. You're in this kind of dystopian future where everything's a mess, and everyone's trying to escape into this virtual world called the Oasis. And the creator of the Oasis, this guy named James Halliday, he's hidden this virtual Easter egg somewhere in this digital world. And whoever finds this thing gains control of the Oasis and inherits this crazy amount of wealth.
And that's where There's Treasure Inside comes in. It's got that same basic idea, but it's all happening in the real world. So you've got these actual treasure boxes hidden all over the United States, and they're full of things worth millions of dollars. We're talking about things like Bitcoin, rare Pokemon cards, even historical artifacts that were owned by people like George Washington or Pablo Picasso.
Well, it's like a movie or something. You know, actually, we got an email from a listener, Rachel Morrison. She actually got caught up in a local treasure hunt a couple of years back.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Rachel's a history teacher, and she wrote about how she ended up joining forces with these other treasure hunters, and it really brought them together into this community. She even said that even though the prize was pretty small, the thrill of the hunt and the feeling of being part of this group made it all worthwhile.
It sounds like she stumbled upon something really special. And, you know, her story really speaks to that power of community.
Yeah.
And shared passion, which both of these stories tap into.
Exactly. And what's so cool is that they both really highlight that idea of the journey itself. It's not just about the destination. So in Ready Player One, you've got Wade Watts, who is the main character, and he's not just chasing after money and power. He's driven by his passion for this virtual world, for the challenge of figuring out the puzzles, and for the connections that he makes along the way.
Yeah, and in There's Treasure, inside the author John Collins Black, he's also making a point about personal growth and the joy of discovery. He's saying that the treasure hunt can be almost like this spiritual journey. It's not just about the treasure itself.
Absolutely. It's about pushing yourself and learning new things and discovering things about yourself that you didn't even know were there. You know, both of these stories are telling us that we're capable of way more than we think.
Okay, so let's talk about that quest itself. Both stories have this driving force behind them, this huge prize that draws everyone in. So in Ready Player One, you've got the promise of controlling this virtual world. And inside, there's treasure. Inside, it's the potential to become rich and own a piece of history. But don't you think there's something deeper going on here?
Oh, for sure. When you think about it, those big prizes, they actually represent something much bigger. I think they tap into this very basic human desire for significance, for leaving a mark on the world. So if you control the Oasis, well, that means you get to shape the virtual landscape for millions of people. And if you find one of these historical artifacts, well, you're connecting with the past. You possess something unique and valuable.
It's almost like finding this key that unlocks a new level of understanding, both for yourself and the world around you. And that brings us to the puzzles themselves. This is where things get really interesting.
Absolutely. The puzzles are the heart of these stories. And in Ready Player One, they're all about 80s pop culture. We're talking old video games, movies, music. It's like a love letter to that whole era.
It's like the creator is saying, hey, if you want to solve this, you have to understand me. You have to appreciate the things that I love.
Exactly. And there's treasure. Inside, the puzzles are just as complex, but they draw on this much wider range of knowledge. It's a blend of literature, history, geography. It's like Black is challenging you to be curious about everything.
Wow, so it's like this giant escape room,
Yeah.
but instead of being trapped by physical walls, you're trapped to the limits of what you know.
And both stories do this amazing job of balancing the difficulty of the puzzles, with making them accessible enough for anyone to solve. They're designed to keep you engaged. And they reward you when you finally figure something out. They make you think, okay, I know there's something here, but how do I unlock it?
And when you do, it's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
It's like your brain is saying, yes, we did it. We cracked the code.
Totally. And it's that feeling that keeps you going. It makes you want to dig deeper and uncover the next layer.
So we've talked about the big prizes, the excitement of the quest, and the satisfaction of solving these crazy puzzles. But there's another piece to this whole thing that both Ready Player One and there's treasure inside really highlight, and that's the importance of connection.
You know, that's one of the things that really fascinates me about these stories. They show us that even though individual skill is important, collaboration can take you so much further. So in Ready Player One, Wade teams up with these other gamers, and they call themselves the High Five, and they realize that if they work together, they can combine their knowledge and learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses.
And what's cool is that there's treasure inside technology is actually used to help people connect. All these online communities have popped up around this treasure hunt, and people are using them to discuss clues and share theories, and even form teams so they can tackle the puzzles together.
And it's not just about being more efficient, it's about that shared experience, the camaraderie, that feeling of belonging to a group of people who get you.
It reminds us that even though technology is everywhere, we still crave those human connections. We want to share what we're passionate about and celebrate our victories together and learn from each other.
Exactly. And speaking of technology, that brings us to another interesting thing that these two stories have in common, and that's the role of virtual reality and what it all means. But before we jump into that, let's just take a minute to think about what we've discovered so far. We've seen how both Ready Player One and A Draw, there's treasure inside, tap into those basic human desires for discovery, for feeling like we matter, and for connection. We've explored the excitement of the quest itself, the satisfaction of figuring out those puzzles, and the power of working together.
Yeah, and we've really only just scratched the surface. Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll be going deeper into the fascinating world of virtual reality and the potential it holds, and the questions it raises about the future of human connection.
Welcome back to our deep dive. So before we got sidetracked, we were talking about how both of these stories are really about connection. And it makes you think about virtual reality because it plays such a big role in Ready Player One.
It does, and Ready Player One really takes you there. It creates this super vivid picture of what life could be like if we could just put on a headset and escape into these digital worlds. It's exciting, but also kind of scary.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting is that Ernest Cline, the author, he doesn't shy away from the downsides of virtual reality. He actually shows how it can be isolating and even addictive, and how it can blur the lines between what's real and what's not.
Right, like remember that scene where Wade's avatar is hanging out in his awesome virtual apartment, but in the real world he's stuck in this tiny rundown trailer. It's like this huge contrast. That shows you how virtual reality can be a way to escape from reality.
It really makes you wonder, are we using technology to improve our lives? Or are we just using it to avoid dealing with real life?
Those are some big questions. And it's not just about escaping into these virtual worlds. It's also about how technology is changing the way we interact with each other.
Exactly. Like in Ready Player One, most of the characters are interacting through avatars, so it makes you think about what it means to be authentic and what intimacy even means in a digital world.
Right, like when Roe v. Wade falls for Art 3ness, this amazing gamer girl. But they don't actually meet face to face until much later in the story. And when they do meet in real life, it's awkward. And it shows you how easy it is to hide behind a digital mask.
It makes you wonder, can you really connect with someone when you're constantly filtering yourself through technology?
Yeah, it's like we're always presenting this perfect version of ourselves online, which makes real life interactions even harder.
Exactly. And that's where I think there's treasure inside offers something different. It's all about real world experience. It encourages you to go outside, explore your surroundings, and interact with the physical world.
You know, it makes me think about what Rachel wrote in her email about her experience with that treasure hunt. She said she started out doing it on her own, but then she met all these other treasure hunters, and they ended up forming this little community. They were working together, sharing clues, and celebrating each other's successes.
And it sounds like those real-world interactions, those moments of genuine connection, were what made it so special for her.
It's almost like there's treasure inside as the opposite of the isolation that you see in Ready Player One. It's a reminder that you can still find adventure and connection in the real world, away from your screens.
And the treasures themselves, they add another layer to this idea of connection. I mean, imagine finding a box full of artifacts from a shipwreck, or holding a rare coin that was once touched by a president.
You're literally touching history. It's a level of immersion and connection that
Yeah.
virtual reality, at least for now, can't really match.
It taps into our fascination with real things, with objects that connect us to the past in a way that pixels on a screen just can't.
It's like you're holding a piece of a story.
Exactly. And that brings us to another theme that's at the heart of both stories, this idea of legacy, of leaving your mark on the world.
So in Ready Player One, you've got Halliday,
Mm.
the creator of the Oasis. And he spends his whole life building this incredibly detailed virtual world. And then he creates this treasure hunt as a way to pass on his legacy, his love of 80s pop culture, and his unique vision.
It's like he's saying, this is what I'm giving to the world. This is what I want to leave behind.
And in a way,
Yeah.
John Collins Black is doing something similar with There's Treasure Inside. He's created this real-world challenge that encourages people to explore and think critically and appreciate history and culture.
Yeah, it's a different kind of legacy, but it's just as powerful. It's like he's saying, hey, there's still so much wonder and adventure out there in the real world. Go find it.
And I think both Halliday and Black are also saying something else. Don't just consume, create. Don't just play the game, make your own rules.
That's a powerful message, especially in a world where we're constantly being bombarded with information and entertainment. It's a call to action, an invitation to be active participants in shaping our lives and leaving our own mark on the world.
I love that. So we've talked of virtual reality, human connection,
Yeah.
and the idea of legacy. But let's bring it back to the individual experience. What can we as individuals take away from these stories? What can they teach us about ourselves and our own search for meaning and adventure?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that adventure can be found anywhere, anytime. It doesn't have to be some big expedition or treasure hunt. It could be as simple as exploring a new part of your town, trying a new recipe, or learning something new. It's about being curious and open to new experiences.
It's about looking for those moments of insight and discovery that make life so much richer. And sometimes those moments are right in front of us, just waiting to be noticed.
Exactly. And both of these stories remind us that the journey is just as important as the destination. It's about the process of discovering things, the thrill of the chase, the moments of frustration and triumph.
Yeah, it's about the growth that comes from challenging yourself, even if you don't always find what you're looking for.
And speaking of challenging yourself, I think both Ready Player One and There's Treasure Inside teach us something really important about being intentional.
What do you mean?
Well, we often think of adventure as something that just happens to us, something we stumble upon accidentally. But these stories show us that we can actually create our own adventures, our own challenges, and our own opportunities to grow. It's about making a conscious choice to step outside of your comfort zone and embrace the unknown.
It's about saying yes to new experiences, even if they seem a little scary.
Exactly. And sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in some far-off place or virtual world, but inside ourselves. It's about discovering hidden talents and unlocking potential that we didn't even know we had, and becoming the best versions of ourselves.
You know, it's fascinating how these two stories, one set in this dystopian future, and the other one grounded in the real world, they both end up teaching us some of the same basic truths.
Yeah, it reminds us that even though we're all different, and even though technology is constantly changing, there are certain human desires and aspirations that never go away. The need for adventure, the thrill of discovery, the need to connect with others, and the desire to leave our mark on the world. These are themes that will always be relevant.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners?
I think it means that we have a choice. We can either let technology take over our lives and get lost in this world of virtual experiences, or we can use technology as a tool to improve our lives, connect with others in meaningful ways, and create real-world experiences that are both challenging and rewarding.
It's about finding that balance.
Between the virtual and the real, between consuming and creating, between escaping and engaging. And maybe, just maybe, in that space between those worlds, we'll find our own hidden treasure.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to transition into the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned as we wrap up this conversation and explore what all of this means for you, the listener, and your own quest for meaning and adventure in a world that's constantly changing. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It feels like we've gone on this amazing adventure. We've explored this virtual world and dug up some real-life treasures. And all just in this conversation, we've been talking about the connections between there's treasure inside and Ready Player One. And I don't know about you, but my mind is just racing with all these different ideas.
Me too. It's incredible how these two stories that seem so different on the surface can make you think so deeply about technology and human connection and what it all means. It really shows you how powerful stories can be. They make you think about the world and your place in it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that you think our listeners should remember?
Well, I hope they feel inspired to embrace that sense of adventure in their own lives. And remember, adventure doesn't have to be about some grand expedition or some high-stakes treasure hunt. It can be something as simple as exploring a new part of your city, trying a new recipe, or reading a book about something you've always been curious about. It's about saying yes to new experiences and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's about being curious.
About the world around you and the world inside you.
And that reminds me of Rachel's email about her experience with that local treasure hunt. Remember how she talked about how it wasn't really about the prize? It was about the community she found, the challenges she overcame, and the joy of discovery.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't material possessions, but the experiences and connections we make along the way.
And I think both Ready Player One, there's treasure inside. They really emphasize the importance of balance. Like in Ready Player One, you see this world where technology has taken over, and people are escaping into these virtual worlds to avoid dealing with reality. But there's treasure inside. Reminds us that there's still so much beauty and wonder and connection to be found in the real world.
It's about finding that sweet spot between the virtual and the real, between consuming and creating, between escaping and engaging. It's about using technology to make our lives better, not letting it control us.
It's about remembering that those real-life connections, the kind you make face-to-face, have a depth and richness that you just can't replicate online. No matter how advanced technology gets, there's something special about sharing a laugh with someone in person, or feeling the warmth of a hug, or experiencing the world side by side with other people.
Absolutely. And both of these stories really show us the power of community and collaboration. Remember Wade and his friends in Ready Player One. They work together to overcome those challenges. And inside his stories, Treasure Inside, you see these online communities popping up where people from all over the world connect through their shared passion for puzzles and exploration.
It's a reminder that we're not meant to do this alone. We're stronger and more resilient when we support each other and celebrate each other's successes.
And I think both stories ultimately make us think about what role technology should play in our lives. Are we using it to enhance our experiences or to avoid them? Are we connecting with people in meaningful ways, both online and offline? Are we creating or just consuming?
These are really important questions, and even though there aren't any easy answers, just asking those questions can help us be more aware and more intentional about how we use technology.
You know, at the end of the day, both Ready Player One and Engels, there's treasure inside. Remind us that we have a choice. We can be passive passengers in life, just going with the flow, or we can be active creators, shaping our own experiences, finding our own path, and leaving our own mark on the world.
We can choose to be treasure hunters, not just of material things, but of knowledge, connection, and meaning. And who knows, maybe in that search, we'll discover something even more valuable than gold or virtual riches. We might just discover ourselves.
That's a beautiful thought, and I think that's a perfect place to end our deep dive.
I agree, but I hope this is just the beginning. For our listeners, we've explored the connections between these two stories, uncovered some really interesting insights, and hopefully sparked a sense of curiosity and adventure. Now it's time to take all of that and see where it leads you.
So keep exploring, keep connecting, keep creating, and most importantly, keep searching for those hidden treasures, wherever they may be.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Well, folks, we hope you found today's video interesting and informative. Make sure to hit the like button if you did. Also, think about sharing it with another treasure hunter. And if you're not already a subscriber, please take a moment to do so now. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, and remember, there's a treasure out there waiting for you to find it.